Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the EVE Universe Show's continued coverage of CSM 16 with our interviews with the candidates. This time we have...
Winzentowitsch Madeveda. And I'm
Vincent.
happy I didn't. Vincent is okay. It's more than enough. I sometimes make errors myself. No hard feelings.
Excellent. Vincent it is. Thank you. I appreciate the mercy of pronouncing it for me. Before we begin, though, how you doing, Vincent?
Yeah, good. In the German time zone, a little bit late, but I'm night active either way, so perfect time for playing EVE.
Well, I do appreciate everybody's flexibility with making time for this to be able to get these interviews done in such a short period of time. And, of course, to respect your time, we're going to jump straight into this by explaining the rules. I have 50 minutes to go over the candidacy with the candidate effectively in order to go and kind of explore what motivates them and how they will be as a CSM candidate to best present them for my audience. After that's done, they get 10 more minutes or 10-minute warning, so that way they can cover any topics that they may want that I may have missed, or final notes, final shtick, whatever they want to do. And then once we are satisfied, then it goes up on over to the YouTubes, and it goes up into the playlist with all of the rest so that you can watch them and make an informed decision, because the goal of all of this is, of course, for us to have the most effective CSM that we can possibly have, and that is by having as many people as we can vote and vote in their interest and be informed and take it seriously. So to that end, let us begin. You, Vincent, are a German candidate. I think that stands out first and foremost. Is
it the beard, or what did give it away?
It's the fact that your post actually has like German references or German phrasing in it as well. I guess first and foremost, do you see yourself as like a German candidate, or do you see yourself as a CSM, a different kind of candidate that happens to be German?
Yeah, mostly the second part, because I think I don't think there is the German bloc or anything, because they're of course spread around different factions, different parts of space, different play styles. The only thing that, funnily enough, is true for many German players is this thing called, in German, it's called Eigenbrötlertum. So they're doing their own stuff. They want to mostly be left alone. They don't want to be influenced from outside. And this is the only thing that I can think of where I could represent the German players. But of course, if you're having trouble with English and want to have a representative, I'm happy to help translating, getting this complex stuff that is often discussed in CSM to the developers in a way that they can understand and that you can also give to me.
Every time that we can get another person in any of this community process, CSM, community team, wherever, that brings bilingualness to it is incredibly valuable for above and beyond everything else, for sure. But okay, so that's not going to be not your main thing, so that's good. Let's go back to the beginning then.
Not my only thing, at least.
Yeah, right, exactly. So let's talk about this. Is this your first time running for the CSM?
Yes, of course. I think it's actually the first time I was somewhat public in EVE. So I was never space famous. I was never streaming, never had a blog or anything. I was just happy doing my stuff, sometimes feeling important while doing it, but never felt the need to come out and be like a leader of an alliance or something.
Right.
So kind of the first time stepping into the light.
Okay, so then if this is the beginning of your CSM campaign career, where did you begin then? So it says here 2012, right? So have you been playing continuously since 2012?
No, not completely. So in 2012, I started, of course, like doing high-sec stuff, mission running. For many areas of this, for many time during those first 3 years, I think, I can't even really remember what I did. Like there are some events I can remember, like flying my first venture directly into a gate camp, into a bubble in Nullsec, while trying to join a Nullsec Corp that was kept with me. Um, but yeah, I think the start was really normal. Didn't have any friends in Eve, which was probably a rough start. Yeah.
All right. And so 2012 you start playing. You suggested that it wasn't continuous, but it sounds like,
No.
more active than not. We all take breaks. But
Mm.
so for what, 8 years you didn't run for CSM and now you are. What has changed?
Yes. So I think that about in maybe 2018, I really had to stop playing Eve because of my dual study program, where I was going to university, working at the same time, not being at home, where I even had a really good setup to even play Eve. I had my laptop that I abused technically to run it on potato mode, and it crashed frequently. Fortunately, never lost my ship because of it. So I did have this big break, and before that, I was really invested. And now that I came back during the lockdown, I was really going on a deep dive. Like, I don't know if you know this, if you ever have a topic you're passionate about it, and you start reading like one Wikipedia entry, and then another one, and another one, and maybe a forum post, and then 2 hours later, you're like, oh, wait, what was the first thing I wanted to look after? And so I got really into all this politics of CSM and what happens there before I decided to run, of course. So I really got into the meta gaming that also a lot of German do, like hosting servers, the Discord servers, or doing blogs on that stuff. So I got to know a lot of people there. And then basically what made me really step into CSM was that I heard about the Cloaky changes, and I wasn't really sure that wormholes will be thought about with this. So this kind of kicked me out of my usual way of playing Eve into a kind of defensive stance, where I wanted to really be involved, which would then of course lead to running for CSM. And before that, I didn't have any reason to, because basically the way of my style of playing wasn't really in danger, as to say.
What cloaky changes are you referring to?
Oh, sorry, the AFK cloaking counter,
Okay,
which is now on Singularity.
I see. So a few months ago when when CCP first started like teasing the warning that like, hey cloaky AFK campers, we're coming for you. You heard that and were like, oh God, CCP is going to forget about wormholers again. I need to go
Kind of,
talk to it.
kind of.
Got it. I mean, fair instinct. So from that, I would say like from that I can pull, just to clarify, since we're exploring your candidacy, would you describe yourself as a wormhole candidate? Like, is that what
Yes,
you are? Okay, great.
yes.
Lock that
I
in.
live in wormholes. I live for wormholes. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, great. So the while the original release of the mobile observatories, which is the ultimate implementation of what you're talking about, wasn't this way, there was a post on the forums that confirmed that by the time it is released, they will not work in wormholes. That's good for you, right? Like, so they took
Yes,
worm.
yes.
So then victory accomplished. You don't need to be running for CSM, right?
Well, you could say that, yeah. So back then it was of course all vague. Like, we have a solution in there, we have it in mind. It's being iterated with the CSM, of course. So we could hope at least that it would go through. But then, of course, if you start thinking about this, there are so many more things where it can go the same way, that we could be forgotten, or like maybe a mechanic that's simple for wormholes or a day-to-day mechanic can just be forgotten. Like, for example, with filaments, the filaments that were brought into the game. Like the one that got you to Pochven, and then the one that got you out of Pochven into Highsec. This is basically a huge deal in wormholes, because before you had to have a chain, you had to find your way to high sec or to low sec, wherever you wanted to go, to get back into a safe system. And now you just have it in your cargo, and whenever you want, you go to Pochven, and then you're in high sec. With a little bit of cloaking in between, but of course, this is something to circumvent the getting lost in wormholes, and also it can be used to circumvent eviction mechanics, because you can just um, pull up your DST, fill it with your most valuable stuff, and then go the filament way out.
Right. And that is true. Help me as a non-wormholer understand why this is considered such a serious problem. Because like new tactics get brought in all the time, and I would argue that Pochven is more dangerous than often gets kind of written off when it comes to people trying to escape from wormhole space. Although wormholers are probably more equipped to deal with the spookiness of Pochven more than say a nullsecker that's using it to escape.
Yeah.
Therefore, your results might vary, and that's true. But like, this is an issue that I've heard come up over and over again. Help me as a non-wormholer understand why this is such a big issue for wormholers.
Hmm. Yeah, so I don't think the filaments themselves are the problem. I don't think they should be banned in Warhammer space, which would be a really blunt solution you could implement. What I think is the problem there is the fact that they can't get caught. So it's like you have this, it's your easy way out. It's not like you have a timer or a big spool up. It's really hard to even combat probe you down while you're doing it. And as far as I understood, there's also not really a big chance that you then get caught in Pochven while you wait for the next filament to be ready to use. So um, it's not about the new mechanic that kind of breaks something that was in place before in wormholes, but I think it's that wormholes can shoot at it anymore.
Mm.
And this is what a lot of people want to do, and what is fun to a lot of people, and they really content why they go to wormholes. And so if you take this away from them, they're not happy about it.
Right. The idea when this has come up before, there was the proposal of the spool up time, and you mentioned that as a suggestion, with even potentially like if somebody can get there and get a scram on it, you can cancel it in the same way like a micro jump drive or whatever like that. Um, one of the concerns is that if the spool up time is too short, then it doesn't really matter because you don't have time to find them and get them. If the spool up time is too long, then it ends up being a big problem for the people that use these filaments for other things. And just going to content. If it's like using a filament and then you have to sit there for 5 minutes, like for
Yeah, for sure,
you
for
know,
sure.
so I guess would you be advocating for adding a spool up timer to these filaments as a way of solving the issue, or would you go for a different solution?
So the possibilities are manifold. So you have, I think, which is already in place for some filaments that you can follow the one jumping through them,
Nope.
so that you simply attach yourself to him and then follow him.
That I don't. That's
That's
not
not
any.
one.
None of the filaments have
Okay.
a way for somebody outside of the fleet to come.
Ah, okay. Yeah, then that was some high sec trolling that I caught wind of. Okay. Yeah, then if that's not the case, but could potentially be like if you follow him and then it could at least try to catch him in Pochven, even though you would probably just get into the next try to get him. But what I think would be kind of okay is to just put the spool up timer only in J space.
Ah,
So,
you're too far
so you
away.
could,
Take some
yeah, of
calibration
course.
time.
It even makes sense lore-wise,
Yeah.
because it's so far away. If you look at it on the map, it's just not. It needs to find its. I don't know how you want to describe it in the end.
I don't
And
want
of
to say
course,
it
I
makes
want
sense
to.
lore wise because Delegate Zero will be like red button, but like I agree with you that like if it ultimately came to it, you could hand wave it some way, and I think that you're right having them because this is the other part of the problem because it's not just pot fin filaments; those just made it more serious. The next question is what about needlejack filaments, and those
Yeah,
also
yeah.
violated kind of the way or changed the way things were and changed what you had access to. But a lot of wormholers see that as good when they see
Mhm.
Pochfin as not so good. Um, so yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Yeah, for sure. No, that's completely correct. Because of course, if you want to talk about some of these changes, like adding spool ups to all filaments, then of course you have to keep in mind all filaments and how they work, what they're used for. And I think, for example, the needlejack filaments, they're used for actively finding content. So PvP fleets jumping out to nullsec to, like, I once did get blapped almost instantly. Depends, but this, of course, shouldn't. This is why I'm totally against banning filaments in wormhole space, because you shouldn't take your fleet out of the wormhole to then go into somewhere in K space and then use the needle check. Just too much work. So, if you're already in a PvP fleet, I don't think the needle jacks are that difficult to use, are that dangerous to use if you have a spooler, for example. And I don't think I've ever heard anyone in wormhole space complaining about needlejacks being used for extraction, because this is in the gist of wormholes, just the stuff that you get to make content. It's not people running away from content without being catchable, which is the uh, worst thing you can do in the wormhole culture.
Yeah. And also one other piece to this whole thing that made me think about it, and then we can move on. Um, like wormholers, like when they say it's too safe to use potch fin filaments, what I think actually they might be meaning is that it's too easy to get to where it is safe. It's a slightly different definition, right? Like, so when I, as a non-wormholer, think about safe, I think about like, well, it's dangerous. It's 15 minutes. Tribog is there. You could find, they could
Yeah.
find you. You might think that you're safe, but what you mean, what they really mean is that when you're done, you're in high sec. When you use a
Yes.
needlejack filament, you're in null sec. You're not home. You're not somewhere safe. And so
Yes.
that's the difference and disconnect in the understanding, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. That's the main reason why no one, as far as I know, complained about needlejacks.
Right.
And I think for most people who live in wormholes, it's not that much a big of a problem, or you're not feeling any more dangerous if you're suddenly in Pochven.
Right.
Because, oh, I don't have a local anymore. It's nothing new.
Yeah, I really help you. I really appreciate you helping me kind of work through that puzzle, because it's one of those things that I've kind of been it's been bothering me, especially with that whole like, well, why are you suddenly against this when it's kind of in some ways like to a lot of people we just see it as like, well,
Yeah,
what's the difference? You're getting out of wormhole space. That was the whole point. You were
yeah,
stranded in wormhole space, right? You're now out.
yeah.
Anyway, so that's a very interesting way of looking at things. But to that end, going back to the wormhole candidate thing, the big thing I'm talking to all of the wormhole candidates about, because there are quite a few wormhole candidates, is that the fact that there are a lot of wormhole candidates is kind of the problem.
Mm,
Uh, there are 10 slots for CSM, and the null blocks get their votes, and usually there's like somewhere between 3 to 5 kind of wild cards. And when wormholes have a big enough population that in the past, when it meant something, when they were able to, they actually held primaries and they pulled their votes together and were able to consistently put forward their representative in a very successful way for a few years in a row. And then it kind of decayed. And then there was what I like to call the Great Betrayal, which kind of broke the wormholes' trust with each other and with the CSM and with that whole thing. And since then, no one has quite been able to rally the voice of the wormholers and in order to build up the vote, in order to be the candidate or representative. And I think that a lack of representation on the CSM of wormholes behind the scenes with the NDA has been demonstrably a problem in the last year. And I think that a lot of wormholers agree. So I think that after this last year, wormholers are ready to take this seriously again, and non-wormholers are ready to look at wormhole candidates. So as I've asked all of the rest of them, why are you the one that can bring together the wormhole vote and be the wormhole candidate?
yeah, that's the big question. And I think if you go to the different wormhole Discord servers to get in on the action and present yourself as CSM candidate, you get a kind of not the welcoming vibe. because it's not like everyone is instantly hostile to you, but I think some people were like, "Oh, you're the next wormhole candidate we have to worry about," bringing another aspect in there. And in the end, I mean, I'm not gonna be totally shattered if I'm not gonna be the one that gets voted in, as long as we get someone competent from Wormhole Space who isn't gonna only talk to his own constituency from his own alliance. I think we should act as the big spooky cartel evicting everyone from Wormhole Space. But I think we should held together on this part, maybe rebuild this trust that was lost. And there are these. It's talked about the lists of wormhole candidates, like they have some kind of order. But I think in the end, everyone will hopefully refer to each other as their second and third and fourth options.
Sure.
And then I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it. I hope so, because I really want to bring in my knowledge, bring in my soft skills, and um, discuss stuff like filaments, for example, where the specifics of wormhole, not only the broad mechanics, are the ones that make the difference.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the solidarity that the wormholers have wormhole candidates have shown in this during this campaign. And I'm not trying to like stick everybody against each other, but like let's be 100% blunt. The chances of there getting multiple wormhole candidates elected is very slim. So ultimately, like you shouldn't be running if you don't think for some reason that you should be the one that gets elected, because by doing so, all you're doing is risking further fragmentation of the wormhole vote. So by running, I would like to interpret that as there is something that makes you go like, you couldn't put your weight behind one of the others. You couldn't rely on another CSM candidate. It needs to be you. So what about you makes you the one that should be the top candidate? Why should you be one instead of two? And what can you bring to the table that might not be there if you're not the one that gets elected?
Hmm. Yes, so I think it's really hard to answer, because in the end, most wormhole candidates have the same agenda. They know of the same problems. They, in most parts, have the same community behind them. And I think the only thing where I can really see a difference, where like something that really matters, like of course you have different focuses of the game. Like are you 100% PvP? Do you like to do some PvE on this side? Are you an industrial on this side? All that stuff isn't really the thing that matters, or why you run. But I think that the realistic approach to talking to CCP as a CSM is something I'm good at. I actually work in a huge company here in Germany that has an ERP system, so a lot of or basically a lot of data is in there. It's, I think, even older than EVE Online. It's didn't have many updates, like groundbreaking updates. Basically the same software since then. It has the even older UI. It's kind of broke in many more places. I'm actually the one in charge of the one thing that gets least updates, so kind of the parallel to Wormhole Space maybe. And like also from my studies, I brought in all the knowledge, all the expectations, all the mindset that we have for maybe not getting the update you want, not getting the dev time you want for new features. And I think with this realistic approach, I can really give something to the CSM and to the players that I want to represent.
Awesome. What is the purpose and value of wormhole space to EVE Online?
Hmm. I think to encompass it for all the players who have these different approaches to what they want to do in Eve, it's basically high risk, high reward. So if you're ratting in there, you don't know how many Cloaky Legions are there. There's definitely one. But you don't know how many. You don't know if anyone's in the system. You can, of course, have an alt on every hole and listen for the activation. and or will it save and all that stuff. But in the end, it's not as you don't have a local. You don't know if someone's in there. But of course, you get. Not sure about Pochven. I think there is still keeping it a secret, but I think we might at least on the same level get the ISK out of running sites. And with this ISK, of course, you can do the high risk PvP. But of course, as everyone is flying expensive ships, like still many people fly Tech 3 cruisers with blingy modules. If you kill someone, you're probably gonna loot a lot of stuff and be happy about it, get a lot of boost to your kill board. And yeah, I think that this is where it, of course, apart from all the mechanics that make wormholes different from nullsec, which are kind of interesting to think about. This is basically the difference. It's more risk, it's more spooky, but of course you get a lot of more out of it.
Do you think that Wormhole Space is currently succeeding in its role in EVE Online? And if not, what is holding it back?
Like it's the part, it's a fact in Eve that it's basically hardcore in a way that you have to really get a lot of knowledge. It's not maybe really complicated in the sense that that the mechanics you need to know to get into wormholes are that complicated, but just the thinking about how it's different if you don't have gates, if you don't have all that stuff, you don't have safety. It's all away, and you have to kind of rewire your brain about thinking how you live somewhere and how you do something.
Are wormholes
And
in a good space right now? Are they fulfilling their role within the game? Are they doing the right? Are they good?
because we were talking about people getting into it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think even then, even with this kind of step up in learning about it, we still get a lot of people in. I see the Herons flying in, the new guys trying to get ISK, and most of the time, unfortunately, getting killed near instantly. I think many people are trying to get into wormholes because of the gas changes that are now needed. I've heard a lot about nullsec alliances having wormhole branches or farmholes, and this is, I think, one thing where you can see that people get pulled into wormholes, but I don't think that it's really sustainable in the long run. Like if you don't get any changes to, okay, I don't think crabbing fleets are these roaching fleets concept is really what's killing us. But there might be the next update that negatively affects us, might drop the player numbers a lot further without getting new people in, and then it could be really on the declining branch. But I think right now it's mostly okay. Maybe not that growing, but it's good. At least what I see in my corp. I don't have the player statistics about how many people are in wormhole space and not.
Okay, it's interesting. So like that, I must confess, I saw you mention roaching fleets in your CSM post, which is what led me down that trail.
Yeah.
You then go on to say that it's not that big of a problem. Um, so first of all, are roaching fleets are basically battleships that are going and running like dread level content and through various different means kind of allowing themselves to farm high level content in a much slippery way than most people expect. And that's a lot of wormholers have considered this a problem. Some wormholers feel like it's less of an issue than others. Where exactly do you fall on this issue? Go a little bit deeper into
Yes.
that.
First about okay, I think I have to explain it first. So yeah, the roaching fleets are basically in many cases the same way that a small group would do C5 content. So if you don't have a marauder, if you don't have a dreadnought in a farmhole, you're gonna need a battleship fleet. Like for example, so I think people do it with a pair of Nestors and then Leshaks, or people do it with only Leshaks and all that stuff. So basically, about 3 to 5 battleships to run these sites. You get a lot out of it. But what the difference from C5 dredging to the roaching fleet is that it's most of the times people multiboxing and multiboxing really hard. There's this one legend of Eos Man, who's doing a little bit of a different concept. So he's not only upscaling the normal CF5 rating, but he has a buttload of Eoses and two drone bunnies, and then dropping sentries, swapping off, and like every time people see him, they think he's mad, and they find it funny. They want to catch him, but they can't, because the thing is with the difference from having a marauder or a dreadnought in a site and these battleships is that the rats only focus on one ship. They sometimes focus on more. Like if you have towers in the background, they might shoot one ship, but what the problem is, only one ship then gets crammed. So one ship can't warp out if there's any danger, if there's a new hole rolled into you.
I'd like
So
to
you can
jump
see
in
the
on that,
new. Yes,
if you don't
yes,
mind.
of course.
So just a little bit of context for everybody. And I'm not going to go into the full history of like EVE Online AI development, but when Wormhole Space was first came out, the AI rats were designed to be like a greater challenge than before.
Yes.
And in fact, actually, the sleeper AI would eventually then go on to become the incursions, being reused for a lot of the authoring of incursions. But then after that, that's when you got their newer AI development with the Drifter AIs, and then what came out of that, which is like Diamond Rats and stuff like that. And then even beyond that, we have Invasion AI with the Event Rats beyond there. So what was once the cutting edge in sleeper space has now actually become one of the last remains of the oldest AI in the game that kind of gets by just by being extremely powerful. Like it's very hard. That was back when they just pumped up all the numbers, gave it omnium,
Omni resists.
omni resists, all the stuff that players used to rely on PvE in order to get their edge. Sleepers undermine all of that, but they don't actually have that good of an AI. So once you've learned that, these guys can basically it's a machine that they are pulling the levers of. Which on the one hand, I mean, they are automated drones, so it makes sense. But on the other hand, it makes these problems. If it can get to this state, it becomes it very quickly can get out of control. Sorry, proceed.
Yes. Yeah, no problem. That's good to also talk about, because when I first joined Wormhole Space in a C5, it was the best AI for ratting, so or the best trained one.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, by now they're completely predictable. Like you do it oftentimes, you do it many times enough, and oftentimes enough, and then you know how it works. Like you know how the sleeper works, you know how the drifter battleship works exactly. Like people know the numbers, and then you just work around with your fits, and you find something, and you out trick him. Yeah, where was I? Roaching fleets and only getting one scram. Yes.
Right.
So the problem there is that now you have this. You don't have 5 guys with each in their battleship, worth about one bill, by the way. So not something you can just do, and still something that hurts to lose. But when a danger approaches, he basically the multiboxer warps out, and he just leaves behind the one guy that's tackled.
Right.
So he has maybe the EOS guy, I think 10, like maybe those origin fleets have about 10 to 15, maybe higher, because it's really scalable battleships. And it's not much of a loss. You can just go to the next system and keep doing it, because he's basically just losing a little bit of DPS. And that's it for him. So he can just keep going and keep going. And of course, he lost 1 billion, but in the time he clears complete C5 systems, he makes so much more that he can just in about maybe 1 hour I'm not sure how fast they are, but I think in 1 hour they should be able to get this cost back in. Mm-hmm. And those guys do it a lot of times, so maybe 10 hours a day, and they just keep grinding and keep ratting, and they're getting so much I don't even know what they do with it. If they just keep expanding their fleet or something, one day they're gonna have funded battleships in the side. Yeah.
But so, and this may be another one of those examples where you might be able to help me understand why this is such an important thing to wormholers. I might look at that and say, like, there are all kinds of these really like apex strategy type things. You know, everything from what was it, 11 golems running World Arcs or whatever it is, to all of the shenanigans with World Arc or not the Dreadnought sites in Pochfin, to faction warfare back in the day with zero gun and cursuses, or even to this day, like with low tier ships that you're able to run the sites with and at scale in order to make large amounts of money. There's lots of different ways where it's like, if you really like at its very, very top, if you understand the game at its highest levels, you can find these like hyper valuable methods of making money. It usually only becomes a huge issue when it's like an actual break in the game mechanics. A good example with this was the friend or fire missiles issue, right? Like they were actually undermining the entire mechanic here. In this case, it sounds like they have simply created a situation with like acceptable loss, right? Which is
Mm.
a notion in a lot of these kinds of things, right? Like it's just the cost of doing business. Uh, why is this an actual problem for wormhole space and not just like
Yes.
a clever solution that a couple guys are making way too much money with?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's the part where it gets really interesting because if you actually, that's just the way we have to start. If you try to explain it on like a public Discord where there are only part worm holders and case-based people, and they come to the same conclusion, which is logical. But the real problem with those roaching fleets is if you compare it, like even a smaller fleet, like 5 guys doing it, not which is not really considered those roaching concept. You have this one marauder. He is about 3 to 5, maybe even more billion ISK rich, and he's gonna be a big target. And if you destroy him, you're gonna have this one ship, and it's gonna be a big loss for him.
Mm-hmm.
If you only lose one ship, it's gonna be really few. It's like a fifth of your fleet. And what wormholders want, like back to filaments, the problem is that people can't just get away with impunity. They can't be caught because the moment that you actually roll into them, you might be able to send in a cloaky alt and look stand beside them, but it's really hard to then catch them because he's gonna be on his toes the moment that he sees another signature pop
Right.
up, and you can't really catch him. Like he's gonna have MVD, he's gonna evade bubbles, and he's gonna leave you the one ship. You
Right.
can get this, but he's just gonna fly away and keep on going. Now, why I said in the beginning of this argument that I don't think it's killing wormholes or it's not really detrimental is that it's not really a problem because it's not that much negatively impacting the fleet, the side spawn, or people don't really have a problem with it. Like they see them. I saw one time too. It's not impacting you negatively. But they of course have their concepts. Like the EOS guy, he's even creative, which I find really funny. Um,
Yeah.
but what people then afterwards complain about which can then be negative for wormhole space is if people looked at the MER
Mm.
and they said ISK a blue loot is way too high. They get way too much ISK. Those damn wormholers.
Right.
They have all the ISK and we don't have any. And this is then an issue where we might get a nerf to blue loot because we have these roaching fleets, which the moment that this nerf hits us will stop, and then we will have almost no ISK, or in the generation will just stop or will get much reduced because they will find the next thing. Like maybe there's some opportunity in Pochven. I don't know what they're gonna do, but they're gonna find something to grant the ISK that they did before.
Right. That's a
And
good point. These guys
yeah,
are not dedicated. These guys aren't committed to wormhole space. They're just committed to whatever it is that is the thing that allows them to get the most money for the least amount of thing with their multi-boxing setup. It's not
yes,
about making a better wormhole. It's not about making a better whatever. It's about they'll just continue to move to whatever it is that is the thing at the moment. Um,
mm,
and I do appreciate that nuance, that the nuance though about like, and that was what I was really trying to get to is this an issue where it actually is impacting the livelihood of other people, right? But and your point to the MER and perception is very salient. We actually have the same issue happens in Pochven as well, to a certain extent. But so the issue is that if one guy or two or three, like a very small number of people find a way to exploit wormhole space for massive amounts of this. And I use the word exploit like not in a cheating kind of way, but like, you exploit
Yeah.
resources. So like they find the best way to do it, so much so that they're making 10 times more than anyone is going to make. It's going to show runaway growth in wealth generated in wormhole space. And so you as a wormholer, again, concerned that people don't understand what wormhole space is all about, you're like, hold on, people need to understand what the whole situation is, because if your solution is to like nerf the value of blue loot, you'll actually end up hurting the people that are doing things legitimately without actually hurting the people who are doing it. This roaching thing. But I do appreciate the fact that you point out that like this isn't an exploit. It isn't uh, a uh, a violation of the game so much, but it is
Not by itself.
definitely
No.
something that needs to be carefully kept a look on. And one of the things, actually, Evie, who we also interviewed, who's also running, who happens to be in chat and helping you out, actually, pointed out that you can micro jump drive in Pochfin, but I responded to that, and then it was just a different question. Like, so just to be clear, those ships in the drift in the wormhole sites, they get scrammed, so they're dead in the water, right? They can't
Yes,
micro
but
jump drive.
only the one.
Only the one. Okay, so it is the one, but the ones that make it to, that's what it is. So the one can just Pochfin out. So you got 10, 9 of them gets away, one Pochfins before the other ones get out, and everybody goes home safe, and that's the issue. Is that pretty much what's happening? Is that?
I think basically the most time the one just dies, just destroyed. But 9 get away, and you can still go on because like you have multiples of the same battleships,
Okay.
and it's really scalable in the way that you can use Nestors to remote rep the spider tank, and then the Leshaks just get in. More Leshak means more DPS, and like this you can scale and scale and scale upwards until you reach this roaching level of running the sites.
Awesome. Okay, so a year ago, well, actually, let me take an even further step back. A long, long time ago, there was no moon mining in wormhole space. Then, when customs offices when moon mining came to HiSec, they decided to also bring it to wormhole space, keeping it at the worst moon type of R4, just to make it so that there's like what they call ubiquitous stuff available. And then that was fine. Wormholers liked mining. You had the ABC ore, and then you had this. Everybody got fat and happy. And then a year ago, there was the ore redistribution balance or whatever, about a year ago, which took all the R4 and took all but like 2 minerals and the R4 moon goo, which up at that point was only worth basically one reaction. So it didn't make them worthless, but it effectively made them worthless, such that I don't know a single wormholer that kept drilling after that. That said, the latest change, the industry change, once again flipped the script in the fact that now there is an intense need for that R4. It went from not useful in anything to necessary in everything very, very quickly. And while there are HiSec groups that still have their stockpiles and can continue to mine it well, they don't have access to the reaction services. And while nullsec and lowsec have access to reaction services, try convincing somebody who's willing to mine in lowsec that it's worth mining R4. You're not going to. So wormholers are one of the main key groups that can do these reactions and bring it to market, and mine it and to do the reactions to bring it to market, and have the gases that were also made more important in all of this. So there was a huge piece of this industry change that really seemed to cater to wormholers that a lot of wormholers I don't think have really talked about or taken advantage of while we're talking about things like roaching fleets. How do you feel about the industry change and its effect on wormholes? Do you feel like it's been beneficial? Do you think it needs to go further? How has it impacted things?
So during the discussion when it wasn't live yet, we had a lot of people with a lot of speculation about what it's going to mean for wormhole space. I think what came true is what wormhole spaces themselves thought. Like there were people saying, well, now that you have the gas and the R4 materials needed for the null sec block, capital production, they're gonna invade you and they're gonna evict you. And
Yeah, I
the
never thought that
Wormhole
was going to
people were
happen.
like, yeah, and all the Wormholes people were like, oh no, they're gonna evict us. They're gonna feed us so much ships, and okay, that's content. Like, bring it on. Try to evict us. Learn how to use a rolling battleship. You're welcome. Do it. And it didn't happen in the way that those guys on the internet, of course, hyperbole, but they
Right.
were calling about the apocalypse of wormholders, and you're going to be all evicted. And it's not that harsh. I think that the gas prices definitely changed. I didn't follow them closely. I'm not using them myself, but I think they went up in price. And what will be, because it's hard to haul gas as they can't be compressed, they're gonna be needed to be um, reacted before shipping them out to null to high sec trade
Mhm.
tops or something. And I think there's probably still a big gap where people can do this, and where I think that a lot of people don't realize they can go there, they get there. Like high sec mining corps, they can go into a C1 or a C2, doesn't really matter, just something with a high sec static. Then put up an Ethanor with that's Freeport. You're gonna have maybe a little less evictions on people shooting at you if you do that, and people follow the codex. And you can get, I think you can have a good time if you're really into that. And maybe you're gonna start doing PvP and gonna be a real wormholer. And yeah, I think that could get people in, but I think a lot of people don't really think about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Convocation and Imperiums are doing exactly that, right? Like we already had the idea before of having like a high sec static wormhole as a logistical, strategic. Oh, what just happened? Hello? Oh no. Hello?
Something
Oh, good. My
I
computer
can
didn't
hear.
blue screen. Excellent. I don't know what just happened, guys. But no, it looks like we're back.
Yeah,
Um,
you can.
yeah. So sorry,
Yeah,
what was I saying before I froze?
that people actually did that when
Oh yeah,
going
yeah,
into wormhole space.
yeah. So I already like had this idea as a high sec group that having a wormhole that reaches everywhere eventually is extremely valuable to us. But
Of course.
and this change just happened to make it so it was like just as we were starting to figure out bringing it back online from our eviction last year, I think it was. But either way, this change happened. It was just kind of perfect. But I will say that having tried it, it worked out pretty flawlessly. We made a lot of money, and it is a really good way for high sec corps that do have that like giant. Oh my god! Wow, that is a frozen face right there.
I can still hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me, but
Yeah,
okay, hold on.
I'm not
Okay,
sure.
all right.
Maybe just keep going if it's only my
Yep.
video,
No, no.
because you don't break up.
It was my video too. Hold on. Let me just make sure real quick before this like totally in the event that my computer is like barely clinging on. Let me see if there's anything else I can turn off real quick. We'll try to keep it alive long enough to end the stream or end the interview. Okay. So
Yes.
but what I'm saying is that like, this is I believe working out, and what's exciting about it is that people all the time say to me, I'm too, I don't get wormholes yet. And the advantage of this is being an entry point is that it's like we've started calling it high sec +1, right? It's like, no, 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 it's not a wormhole. It's always adjacent to high sec. And we know where
Yes.
the
Yes.
adjacent piece is. So like this is a place to go dabble in so that way you can understand how wormholes work and get the most out of wormholes without having to feel like you are literally thrown into the deep end. Do you have
Mm.
any thoughts about that and the use of the changes as an incentive to kind of attract people to try out wormhole space?
Mm. Yeah, so of course, it's definitely valuable. I think if I wouldn't have been with my current corp, I would have at some point worked up the ISK needed and set up a solo Ethanor in a C1 or C2. And of course, it's gonna be good for setting up new groups and wormholes. But I think the entry level problem is that people just don't know about it. Like, if you by chance have ever been in a wormhole corp, you know what a static is, what it means to be in the C2 with a high sec static. Like, you're gonna be in high sec. One jump, just scan it. It's always gonna be there. If you roll it, you can even get close to the trade up you want. Like,
Right.
if you just roll long enough, you're gonna get a 4 jump or even 2 jump or 1 jump Cheetah connections. We had one in
So
the last few weeks.
so
A lot
if
of action.
I'm
Yeah.
almost out of my time for my portion. But just to drill in on that a little bit, like if the real problem is a lack of knowledge and a lack of like awareness by the by the player base, um, how are you as a CSM member going to? Do you have any planned strategies? How are you going to contribute to that?
Yeah, that's basically the old problem of the new player experience. Like, everyone wants to fix it. It's not even really specific to wormholes, I think. But there are a lot of people who are trying to go out of the way to be newbie friendly. Like
Sure.
with our corp, we have, I think, 2 new guys in the last 2 weeks, and they're gonna learn here. They haven't yet really have everything figured out yet in wormholes, how it works. And then I'm not really sure, because I think a lot of people are pushed into wormholes, but just being in a wormhole, it's so far away from understanding what a static is, because it's not in game. Like, you don't get any in game notification like you're now using the static hole or something.
Right.
You actually have to go out of your way to read up on wormholes, and then you can also do it without getting mentored by someone. But you actually have to go this way and get this knowledge in order to then know that, oh wait, there's a lucrative idea, I can do something there. And I'm
But
not sure how many people really want to do this.
right, I agree with that last statement. And but the thing is that as the wormhole representative, you would be in a great position. Like I think that people would look to you for understanding about wormholes. Not just representing wormholes, but also almost like functioning as the ambassador, the go-between, all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
We have a lot of people that are, people running across the spectrum, not just in wormholers, that do tutorials and other guides like that. You accept the fact that knowledge is the most important thing. Is there anything that you can do, CSM or otherwise, to help bridge this gap to make it so that wormholes are better, if that's what's really holding it back?
Mm. Well, what I personally right now I'm doing is I'm helping one of our corp mates to write on his blog also a kind of comprehensive guide to wormholes. That's not similar to UniWiki. Of course, he copied there, but um, the overall approach to it, like, it's gonna have all the information you need to set up in a wormhole or join a wormhole corp. And
Awesome. That's a great example,
mm,
and I look forward to that. Excellent.
yeah, as a CSM, I think I'm not really sure, because if this is something that you could easily, like, without being in CSM, like from the batch, just be able to solve and have an idea, I think we would have already have the much better new player experience. But we don't have it, and I think there's a reason for this. And if I could answer you, I would love to. I would totally love to, but I don't think I can.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. I didn't mean to like try to put you on the spot, but it was something to think about because a lot of times CSM are kind of seen as community leaders, uh, certainly once they're elected. Um, for and in my opinion, rightfully so. And so it's an important question asked to see if we can motivate CSM members, or at least maybe find people for CSM that are motivated to not just say that somebody should do it, but be the person that does do it.
Mm, yeah, for sure. And I
Uh,
want new people in. Like, I every time Heron, it's the most usual ship that flies into wormholes, goes into a relic site, and then gets blown up by us. Every time we see, oh, that's a new guy, we give him his money back, we replace his loss, and then give him at least one good meant tip on how to further explore wormholes without getting blown up by us. So my heart cries every time, but I still do it because I think they're gonna learn by getting destroyed.
It is a provenly effective recruiting strategy. That is basically my time. I do have a little bit more that I would like to dig into, but I definitely want to give you an opportunity as well. If there's anything
Um,
specific that you wanted to dial in on.
by chance, if you want to talk about boosters, I would be open up to that.
Excellent. Okay, so you have
Yes.
opinion about drugs. Let's talk about drugs to
Yes.
finish up my day.
Yeah. So as you can see in my in my Eve life, the way I got into the game, you can see a large portion of it is with Ease and Wiz. They were at the time the largest manufacturers, the largest yeah, the whole stack. So we got the gas, we transported the gas, we manufactured the boosters, and we got it on markets like there were some in lowsec, and we also got it directly to customers.
Yeah.
And this wasn't only a huge quest for the corp, but it was only a real special way of playing, because back then, I don't know how many people still think about it. Boosters were illegal. You couldn't get them through HiSec,
Mhm.
and you had this. You still have the smuggling mechanic, like you can't, for example, small arms are forbidden in Caldari space,
Contraband, yeah.
and yeah. But the boosters were illegal in every space, and if there was a client who wanted, to start his roam in a high-spec system, or you could only get there, through high-spec space, then you had to go through there, and we knew how to do that. We basically used Asteros and were a cloaky insta-warp, and that could get you in 99% if you didn't have any lags or something through high-sec with illegal cargo. But of course, it was an interesting part of the game that is now mostly lost, because it's not really relevant as much. It still exists, but yeah.
So to circle back on that, to make drugs, you need to get gas from various different places, and then do reactions and other things in what was then pauses, but now you can obviously the places where you do reactions, and
The ethanol.
but and as you pointed out, the anything beyond synth level drugs was illegal. So it wasn't even just about having the stuff or being able to produce it. You then had to also be a drug dealer, right? Like you had to get smuggling paths, because you couldn't trade it in JITA. You couldn't
It,
trade it in, I don't even think you could trade it in contracts.
you could trade it in Jita. I think you
Well,
could put it on the market, but no one would buy it in Jita because they themselves would have to get it out of Jita. So it's no
right,
use there.
right. Yeah, there was no filaments to get them out or anything like that. Yeah, so like there's this whole gameplay and like having to have this network of contacts of like you not only had to be able to produce the drugs, but you had to have like customers to then sell the drugs to in bulk. It was this whole weird, very deep drug dealer game that I've seen some people play with and fail at, some people play with and have a good time with. But you're right, it was this kind of niche gameplay that very few people knew, very few people appreciated, and I think that was part of the problem, which is that like drugs themselves are also like kind of really useful from a design point of view. And so eventually, as part of this, they wanted to open up drugs so that way it's just a cost issue and the drawback issue and not an illegal issue. So that way people like adopt it more. And yeah, it made it so that people use drugs a ton more. And the boosters have become far more ubiquitous, far more of a normal thing that people do, especially things like Abyss and the ability to roll off your hindrances. These are all made drug production, like drug consumption rather, way higher, but
Yes.
at the expense of that complex, intricate, weird underworld black market gameplay.
Yeah, with all those roleplay I saw on the corp, it's a really funny thing with the narcotics channel where we would join, and then you would say, "Hey, is someone here? I want to buy some stuff," and then someone contacts you, and depending on who your dealer was, he was more into roleplay, and so oftentimes the customer really weren't, but
So
it was really funny at time, and yeah, of course, boosters, they got way more popular, at least in use, but of course at the cost of the smuggling, which I find really. I'm not sure if I were in charge, I wouldn't have done it. I probably would have done it, but still, it's kind of I'm sad that it's gone.
So that is a very interesting perspective and useful in its own right for somebody to go to the CSM about. And I think that like really something that could be explored more about your value as an individual, not just as a wormhole candidate or whatever. I guess just as we wrap this up, accepting the fact that like drugs need to be changed or whatever, like can we think about what about it that like what was the essence of made that gameplay good such that we can recapture it? Just to give an example of what I mean by that, when the roque wall changes came out, and then roque walls went from a passive thing to an active, person on the gate. I interviewed some people and I talked about the fact that the play style of the foreman was dying. The idea of the guy who makes sure that things are good for his people and manages the affairs and provides the infrastructure, that was really what was being lost in all that. And that's why we had these roque pilots that were upset, not because they now need to put their roque walls in danger, but because their idea, the advantage, the edge that made them work as an industrialist, as an industrial organization that attracted miners to their institutions, that was being taken away. And so in my discussion about that, I talked about how they need to be given some sort of like, you know, it isn't even about making roque walls boosting the same as before. It's about giving the foremans some new tool to let them still be foremans. And then, as a consequence of that, the next thing that happened, or not a consequence, but lo and behold, we get Athenors. And Athenors allow these groups and these institutions to have personalized mining. It's not the same thing, but now it does do that the whole thing where now as an institution, I have a reason to recruit you in, and I have a reason why you want to come and be part of my group. And therefore the idea of the foreman was restored. With that in mind, how do we regain what was lost when drugs were changed without illegal drugs? Or at least without making these drugs illegal again? It's on the spot, I know.
Yeah, I think I would have to circle back on that and get back into with my old contacts, because they definitely sent ideas to CCP on how to solve this without just making it go away. I think it was basically about improving the smuggling mechanic, because as with a lot of things in Eve, it's often about really going around what was intended, like the what I find to be sometimes often more used as a meme. No one was expected to live in wormholes, but people did.
Mm-hmm.
And no one, I don't think people were intended to smuggle stuff through HiSec, but they did because it worked. And yeah, that's the hard part, and as I didn't really think about it in my
Oh yeah,
campaign,
it was absolute ambush. And you know what? I think that is the correct answer. To be fair, like this isn't something that you've thought about really long. And you said, I know people that know about this. I'm going to go dig into this and figure it out. And in my opinion, that is about the best answer that you could give. And personally, I hope that you do that regardless of whether or not you're elected to CSM, because I think that is that is something that's actually really important. And you're one of the few people that might be able to help us capture something that was lost. And to that end, as I think that your candidacy is very, very interesting, exciting. And I think that anybody who's interested in that kind of what I've really taken from this interview in particular is how well, I've really challenged you probably more than some other candidates to really talk about your processing of the game design of things. And you've really hung very well. You speak very intelligently about your understandings of mechanics. You're very well storied, and you have history that I don't think a lot of people can bring to the table, which also brings perspective that a lot of people can't bring to the table. A very interesting candidate indeed. I wish you the best of luck. And I think that you'd be really good on the CSM.
Yep, I hope so too.
All right. Well, thank you for that. If you have nothing else, then I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time during this marathon. I think you're probably going to be more exhausted after this than I am, even though it's later for me.
Well,
But
but
yeah.
but I'm not. I don't risk getting elected. You get the
Oh, of course.
added effect of like at the end of this being like, oh God, now I got to do it for a year. So have at you on the when this is done.
Yeah.
I'm taking at least a couple days off. Let me tell you.
Yeah, the worst thing that can happen is that I'm actually getting elected, so gonna
Don't
have all
say
the work
that.
on me.
No. Yeah. Well, now we're going to elect you just to make you get to work. All right. Thanks for coming, man. Have a good one. Good luck.
Yep. Thanks. Fly safe.